It was the hardest decision of my life, but I knew I had to leave. There was a glimmer of something better, a chance.
Blake Monroe felt her heart lift when her son Mark called with a warm, cheerful voice to share a surprise. He said he and his wife Tanya wanted her to join them on a special family trip. It was a chance to spend time together and make new memories. After years of quiet evenings in her Tennessee home, the thought of traveling with her loved ones filled her with joy. She could almost see herself walking through sunny streets, sharing meals, and laughing like they used to. She trusted Mark completely and never once imagined there could be anything hidden behind his offer. Every word he spoke sounded so sincere, and she treasured that feeling as if it were a gift. 4 days after the call, Blake planned the trip with quiet, almost childlike excitement. She took her suitcase out of the back of the closet and carefully folded clothes, tucking away little gifts she had bought for Mark and Tanya. She even wrapped them in soft paper, picturing their smiles when they opened them. Money was tight, but she set aside a small amount for herself, just enough for snacks or a postcard or two. Whenever she called Tanya to check on the plans, she received the same sweet reassurance. "Everything is taken care of, Mom. Don't worry." Those words made Blake feel cared for, even loved. When the day finally arrived, Mark came early to drive her to the airport. He carried her bag effortlessly, smiling as if nothing could go wrong. His goodbye hug was warm, and his voice held excitement when he said, "You'll love this trip, Mom." She stepped onto the small connecting flight with a full heart, sure she would see him waiting at the next airport, ready to start their adventure. But when she walked into the bustling terminal after landing, no familiar face was in sight. She waited, gripping her bag and scanning the crowd repeatedly. Minutes turned into hours. She called Mark, but he didn't answer. A kind airport worker helped her check her ticket, and that was when the truth began to sting. It was only a one-way flight. No return, no hotel reservation, and no plans for her. The realization settled slowly, like a cold shadow creeping over her heart. She had only the little cash she'd brought, barely enough for food, let alone a place to stay. As the terminal grew quieter that night, she sat on a hard bench, hugging her bag for safety. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and voices from distant loudspeakers echoed in her ears. She felt abandoned, not just physically but also in a way that shook her deeply. Her son had left her here, and there was no easy way to disregard that truth. Morning crept into the airport with the slow rise of sunlight through tall windows. Blake's body ached from the cold and the stiffness of the bench. She wandered toward a small cafe, counting the few bills in her wallet. Hunger and shame tangled inside her, but she forced herself to order the cheapest breakfast on the menu. She ate slowly, her eyes fixed on the doorway, half hoping Mark might appear with an apology. Instead, a woman wearing a bright volunteer badge approached her table. She introduced herself kindly, saying she worked with a local church group that helped travelers in distress. Blake hesitated, unsure if she could trust anyone again, but there was warmth in the woman's eyes. Within an hour, the volunteer arranged for a ride to a small senior shelter nearby. The shelter wasn't fancy, its walls were plain, and the beds were lined up close together, but it was safe. That night, as she lay on a thin mattress under a worn quilt, Blake realized she had been given more than a place to rest. She had received the first small piece of hope. She remembered a quiet bank account she had kept since her husband's passing. Mark didn't know about it. She drifted to sleep holding on to that thought, feeling the first flicker of control returning to her life. The next morning, she took a bus downtown and stepped into her bank. The clerk confirmed the account still held every dollar she had left untouched. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to start over. From the bank, she walked into a small law office she had passed many times over the years. Sitting across from the lawyer, she told her story in steady, measured words. She explained what Mark had done and how she no longer wanted him to be part of her life or her plans. The lawyer listened quietly before nodding and preparing the documents. By the time Blake left, her will no longer included her son's name. Her estate would go instead to Elder Haven, an organization that cared for abandoned seniors like herself. Weeks later, Blake moved into Willow Grove, a senior community with bright rooms and halls filled with laughter. She took painting classes in the mornings and learned to play simple tunes on the piano in the afternoons. She shared meals with friends who each had their own stories of loss and betrayal, and together they built something new, a circle of trust, laughter, and understanding. She felt more at home here than she had in years. One crisp autumn day, the phone in her room rang. Mark's voice came through, soft and filled with false concern. He spoke of missing her and wanting to make things right. Blake listened, her mind drifting back to that cold night on the airport bench. She waited for him to finish, then simply said she was doing fine before hanging up. She leaned back in her chair, looking out at the golden leaves falling outside, and knew with absolute certainty that she had taken her life back, and she would never give it away again.